All right, guys, I hope you're ready to be blessed like crazy today because here's the deal. Sometimes you don't feel crazy blessed, right? Sometimes you go through things in life and you wonder why, and you feel almost like, how do I come out of this? Like, what's next for me? And maybe there's something more at play that I don't even know right now. So that's why I'm really excited to bring on a special guest today, Kechi Okwuchi, and she's going to be talking about her story, which may be a lot like what you could be going through. Kechi, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here on Crazy Bus.
Oh, I am too. I am too. I mean, I'm excited for you, girl. Your story is nothing short of amazing.
Thank
First
you.
of all, and I know you have a book out called More Than My Scars,
Yes.
and definitely want to talk about your book, but also I think some people right now who are listening, Catchy, they might feel like they're in that place where all of a sudden what their expectations are turned upside down and they're faced with a situation and they really don't know how they're going to come through with it. So share a little bit about your situation and what happened in your life.
Hmm. So, what happened to me? Well, when I was 16 years old, I was in a plane crash that took the lives of 107 of 109 people on board. It was a regular flight, commercial flight. It was myself and 60 other students from my high school, along with other passengers and the flight crew. And we were heading home for Christmas. So it was a trip from one state in Nigeria, which is where I'm from, to another state, which is where most of us students that were on the plane lived. So this was a regular flight, regular trip. It was a routine journey that myself and many other students and people in Nigeria take. But for me and the students on the flight, we were going home for Christmas because we came from a boarding school and we had been in school for the whole semester. So this was a typical journey for us. It wasn't anything strange, but then everything went wrong while we were in the air, and I believe there was a thunderstorm, at least that's what we were told. And that combined with pilot error and wind shear caused the plane to crash in the middle of the storm and explode. And I sustained third-degree burns over 65% of my body.
My
And
gosh.
I had to be immediately flown to a place, the closest place that could immediately start caring for me because Nigeria didn't have the facilities for the level of burns I sustained. And that's how my burns journey began.
Wow. Wow. And so coming through that, like I know it's hard. Well, it may be, I don't know, like going back to that place. Um, what was that feeling? Like, did it feel like starting over, or what was going on?
In the beginning, it was, I mean, when you think back on it or when you take stock, and you can only take stock after like some time has passed, it was kind of a restarting. I mean, there was no choice. It was something that was forced, upon all of us who were somehow, related to that incident, and that was a lot of people. So, for those that were left behind, loved ones, and then for myself, who, at that time, the most important thing in my life was SATs, and I was a senior in high school getting ready for the next phase of her life.
Yeah, yeah,
All
yeah.
those things were just like halted. None of that mattered anymore. And
No.
life had to be, it had to start over. And
Yeah.
this new reality that we were all introduced to just had to be adapted to. There was no choice. Now, how you adapt, that's a different thing, but the adapting had to happen. As long as you survive something in this life, you have to find a way to move forward because time isn't going to wait for you, So it was definitely a restarting for me. But that's something I only realized later on as I got better. In the beginning, when I wasn't even sure if I would survive, I was just hanging on and trying to make it from one day to the next, from one moment
Wow.
to the next, So
Wow. Wow. And now, not just you've come through it, but you have had some incredible accomplishments.
thank
And I know someone's thinking like, okay, what's my excuse? Like here she is. She goes on, what was it? America's Got
you.
Talent, and Like, tell me about that. Like, how does one do this? How do you come from that to now, is it
Honestly,
just like life is so valuable? You're like, I'm just gonna like get everything I can out of this.
that's a really good perspective as well. And definitely when I adopted, like after I kind of got my independence back and my life wasn't only, hospital visits and surgeries anymore. But that being said, I didn't specifically have the goal of going on a show like that or even doing anything public or like big like America's Got Talent. I was just living my life as fully as I possibly could because I had a responsibility to do so. I had placed this I guess pressure on myself to live well and to
Yeah.
show the people that passed away, the people that whose lives were lost, my friends who were gone,
Yeah.
and their parents and their loved ones that they left behind. I needed to show them that I appreciated that this was a second chance that a lot of people didn't get. And I couldn't do that if I, stayed depressed or I just kind of went through life with no intention. I
Yeah.
wanted to show them, not that I needed to prove anything to them. Like they didn't ask me to do something incredible and prove the reason why God saved me. No, it was just, I wanted to, whatever I ended up doing, whether it was ordinary or whether it was extraordinary, I wanted to do it well and with no regrets. So that was my basic approach to life following the accident, just because I just felt I had that responsibility, and it didn't take anything from me. It just meant putting myself out there and not being afraid to just be me and be authentic
Wow.
and put my best foot forward in every situation and not let how I look or what I've been through change what kind of goals I was going to have for my life, whether or
Wow.
not the accident happened. So it was in that living and years passing that way, trying to stay in that mindset that America's Got Talent kind of happened, in the process. So
Yeah.
it years after, I had started school again in 2009 and AGC happened in 2016. So I was not even a senior. I was my first year of grad school as an MBA student when that happened. So I was living my life. I was doing things.
Yeah.
And it just kind of came into my life. I'd always loved singing, but would I ever have put myself on the platform like that? No, because there's a lot of singers. People love to sing, cool.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that yours is going to stand out or that yours is special. And I never felt like mine was so great that I need to go put myself in the competition. I was never going to do something like that. So one of my best friends actually signed me up for the show without telling me. And that's how
That's a good friend.
that's how I ended up on that platform. So obviously I'm extremely grateful that she put me out there, kind of kicked me out there, really.
Yeah.
I got to a point where I had to make the choice if I wanted to actually follow through. And I'm glad I did because I mean, I wouldn't even be here speaking to you right now if I never took that chance. So I always see AGT as that gift that just keeps on giving, years and years later. And I'm just glad I took that step, but I'm more happy for my friend taking that
That
step.
is so beautiful. What a good friend, right?
Pretty great, I guess.
To believe in you enough to encourage you. I mean, those are the kind of friends we all need. We don't necessarily like them in the moment, but we love them. They help us be more of
They have our
ourselves.
best intentions at heart for sure, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just she's very valuable and she definitely saw something, heard something, I guess, in me that till today I struggle to hear anything special. But I mean, because of what she heard and what she felt about me,
Yeah.
she felt like it was worth it to put that foot forward. So
So beautiful.
beautiful.
So beautiful. So tell me about More Than My Scars. Like when did you get this idea to write this book or what motivated you really to get this in the hands of other people?
So More Than My Scars is a story about my burn survivor journey. It's really that simple. The majority of that story is the growth and the transformation, physical and spiritual and mental and emotional, psychological, that happened in the first 7 months, really, of becoming a burn survivor, a plane
Right.
crash survivor. Those were the formative years that basically became the foundation of every, like, the Kechi that came out of that situation, that hospital, and started to live her life here in America with Shriners Hospital that took care of me and gave me back my independence. South Africa, where I spent those first 7 months after the accident, that's where they saved my life. In America, Shriners is where they gave me back my independence. But that phase, that saving life phase, that 7 month period was the most significant moment of my life, I think. And so I knew that if I was going to tell my story as completely as possible, I would have to start from there. And I knew that I wanted to tell the story. I knew that just from events that I'd had so far, this is before America's Got Talent, when I just go to churches to speak or speak at just like random events or whatever, people want me to just share because they feel like there's something in my story that people can be inspired from. Just from experiences like that alone, I just always felt that maybe this was the path that God wanted me to take in some form or fashion. I didn't know how, but I felt like whenever I spoke about my story, at least one person in the crowd would feel encouraged in some way. And there was something there,
Yeah.
that I felt was worth exploring. So if I could possibly do it on a larger scale, why not? I feel like that might be a part of what he wants me to do with this life and with this experience that I have. So there's no better way to do that than to expand the story I typically tell in a condensed form, like in a concise format, like on the stage or something,
Right.
in a book.
Right.
But then to do that, I would have to delve into memories that I don't want to. That that 7 month period in South Africa is something that since it happened, since I experienced it, I never thought about it because why would I? It's the worst moments of my life.
Right.
And so despite the fact that it's where I had the most growth, it's also where the most pain happened. And so I don't think about it. So that's the birth of this idea of writing this book. It started from all the way before even AGT in 2014, 2015-ish. But I would always get stuck because I would have to go all the way back.
All the way back. Yeah.
And I wasn't ready for any of that at all. So
Yeah.
just in this thing I knew I would do one day, but was never encouraged or like motivated to do so because the memories were just so painful. And in a way, it kind of made me also realize that there was still some healing to be done in that sense. I didn't consider myself a person that was repressing any kind of feelings or needed to go through therapy for anything. I was doing okay. I was recovering and adapting and living as I feel well as anyone in my circumstance could have come out of this. I've always been a positive person and I felt like I wasn't forcing it, but just the fact that I couldn't write that book, I couldn't start from this, from there. Couldn't even think of those memories made me realize whoa, there might be something that needs to be explored there,
Yeah.
So I wasn't ready to face any of that. So after AGT, the more I kept on speaking about my situation and my experience, the more I was standing on more stages where they wanted me to speak and share my story and to sing and all these things. I kept doing it like this was my everyday life now. And I just couldn't avoid the fact that this was something that, man, if I expand on this, I feel like so many people will be touched and so many people will be reached. And so I started thinking more and more about maybe I should really start writing this book. So I started trying to write it and I took my time thinking, I don't need to rush it, just take your time, but just start. And then I got reached out to by an agent in 2019 who had watched me on America's Got Talent. And then he saw me again on Buzzer and he reached out in the Champions where I got the Buzzer. So he reached out and was like, he's always been following my story. And he felt like, man, this girl's story was so incredible. But he never really wanted to, he wasn't sure if I was ready to do that, if I was even thinking about writing a book. So, but after he saw me a second time, he was like, this is a sign. So he reached out to me. And he basically just gave me a timeline, told me what it would take, what I need to do. When I was ready, he would be there. And 2019 was my busiest year as a traveling performer and speaker. So I had reasons not to do this. And I just told him, when I do it, I'll let you know, so he would never push me. He would just give me a nudge every few months, how, what's going on. And then COVID happened and there was no more traveling. And he was just like,
is it time now?
No, I mean, look, we have nothing but time now. So what do you think? And I had been waiting for his call because I knew I mean, now there's no excuse. There's no reason not to. And frankly speaking, I might not get another chance with this long stretch of time with nothing in between where I can actually focus and do writing,
Right. So powerful.
What happened?
So something that you shared is that it was hard to look back on that because it was the most painful time in your life, but it was also that time when you had the most growth. And I mean, this is almost like every time there's pain, we can choose to succumb to it, or we can choose to allow the greatest part of us to come out and be refined by that pain. And
Mhm.
I think that that's the choice that we get to make. And I know there's so many people who are listening or watching right now who do have times in their life that they don't want to revisit. They don't want to go back there. But in those moments, we can see how God brought us out of that. And
Mhm.
that's where the healing can happen. But
Mhm.
you talk about that. Your faith had a large part to play in
Yeah.
this story. Share about that, about your faith journey.
Honestly, my faith journey is something that it wasn't something that was with me from like the start of my
Yeah.
experience. You know,
Okay. Yeah.
I was born into a Christian household, yes. And I was a Christian, as far as my parents were Christians. I whatever my parents were, I was essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
And
kind of
then,
like your identity, not necessarily like your lifestyle, like how
yes,
you
it
live
was
and how you think.
exactly. I would definitely say I identified as a Christian. I would say
Yeah.
that with my whole chest, but like um and I believed in like the morality part of
Right. Right.
being a good person and all that stuff. That's what he likes. That's what God likes. And I went to church because my parents went to church. Like, the point being, I didn't internalize any of this stuff. It wasn't really anything that I was doing for myself, but more
Mhm.
because this is just what this is our belief system. It wasn't a choice I had made
Right.
for
Right.
myself yet.
Right.
But if you ask me if I believe in God, yes, I do. That was teenage Kechi at that point before the accident happened. So after the accident happened, with my mom and her faith being this, for me at least, eventually became this like model, to
Wow.
like follow after. Um she obviously, was always praying for me, reading scripture to me. And after the accident happened, there were very few things that could help me kind of calm down and relax that were not medication. And my grandma, she taught me meditation, which also helped me eventually. But I had to be kind of calm and peaceful and accepting for that to work. There was a lot of work that had to come from me for that to work.
Yeah.
And then there was prayer from my mom and reading scripture to me. Those things gave me peace, even though I didn't really understand why. But I feel like I just felt like whenever she was praying for me or reading scripture to me, there was just a piece about it. I attributed it to just, less about the words that were being spoken to me or over me, and more about the person that was delivering them. She was
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
rock. She was my reason for living for a very long time after the accident happened. And
Wow.
I would literally do anything for her if she felt like, she wanted me to survive. So I would do what I could to survive. She wanted me to take my medication, to do my physiotherapy, whatever it was I needed to do. I would do it because it would make my mom happy. And when she prayed for me and when she read scripture to me, it made me feel peaceful. It made me feel like, everything would be okay. I didn't really understand that it was a lot to do with the actual words that was being spoken over me, that, like it was basically a combination of both. The person
Yeah.
and them believed in them, and then the
Right.
words themselves have life. And I feel like in the beginning, I was just okay with that derived relationship with God, where it was like indirect with
Okay.
my mom,
Yeah.
being that middleman. And so I
Mhm.
never really felt like I needed to do anything for myself, because she got it, she covered, she had
Right.
it
Right.
covered. But that changed as time passed when I realized that there were parts of me that weren't healing the way that they could. Um, and I also felt like every time she left, the peace left with her. And so I just
Oh,
felt like
wow.
eventually I got to a place where I needed to I just wanted access to that peace for myself. So it was really my introduction to God, like for myself, was from a very selfish point of view. It was very, very self-serving. I just wanted, I just connected dots. Like, I feel like this has power, and I just want whatever that power gives me peace and allows me,
Yes.
like, I can go through this and I'll be okay. And so I just
Yeah.
want access to that somehow. So I started kind of being curious about God and asking questions. And that was basically how my journey started in my faith. Of course, it was a very rocky road, ups and downs, lots of ups
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and so many things. And the fact that other people passed away, like my friends were gone, that didn't make any sense to me in the context of who
Right.
God was.
Right.
So those were things I worked through with my family and with God Himself,
Yeah.
and just trusting Him and understanding Him, which would allow me to believe in Him.
Mm, mm.
That was, I think, that was how my faith journey started. It was very rocky. Sometimes it still is. A lot of times, in fact, it still is. But I'm no longer in that place of having to kind of prove whether he exists or not. That's no longer an issue. It's just a matter of, falling by the wayside whenever, forgetting, the things that you already know about him when things are bad, and then having to remind yourself constantly. That's pretty much the Christian life, at least for me. So,
yeah.
But I learned the important things while in South Africa, and I'm happy I did, like, for myself. So
Right. That's amazing because, God is so big. He's big enough to take everything, our confusion, our anger, our sense of loss, our grief, even if we're angry at him, he's willing to take that. Like, we can bring anything to him, and it says in the Bible that he's already poured out all his judgment onto his son, so there's none left for us. So if anyone's listening and it's like, wow, I can't go to God, I'm kind of angry at him, and I would be punished by him, or I'm holding things back, you can bring anything to him, because he already knows anyway. He knows our hearts and he loves us anyway, right?
Yep.
So good. So what would you say to that woman before we wrap this up? I'd love to just ask that woman who is feeling kind of confused right now. Like, I thought my life was going to go this direction and it didn't. And now I'm left with a lot of confusion, a lot of anger.
Yep.
A lot of healing that needs to be done. Like, I can see the journey ahead. I don't want to take this journey.
Oh my gosh.
What would you say to her?
I so understand that, I think the best way would be to kind of illustrate what working through that thought process was in the worst moment in my life, which is when I learned the truth about the accident, the fact that everyone else except 2 people survived, the fact that all my other friends were gone. So
you didn't know that right away?
I only found that out about 4 months in, because they had to wait until I was physically and psychologically, like, healed enough to actually, bear the brunt of the truth. Yeah, they couldn't. So they eventually they told me. And at this stage in my life, this was the Kechi that was in the middle of learning about God and excited. Right. I was finally, like, asking questions for my own understanding, and trying to, kind of know who he was and learn how to, like, learn of him so I can trust him with my problems and so take care of the things that I was going through. And then I learned about this. It threw everything away. It just destroyed my entire understanding. I was at a very serious crossroads because I didn't understand. It wasn't adding up. How is he so great? And then he lets this kind of thing happen. Those were children. Like, it made no sense to me whatsoever how someone who was supposed to be this great God that can do everything and save everything, whatever he wants, he would leave something like this to happen. So it wasn't that I believed he did it, just I felt like he just stood by while it happened. And it didn't make any sense to me because that's not what I was learning about. Right. So I remember I struggled with that for weeks. I cried, I was depressed. I was just plunged into this dark place that I was not even in before I started trying to learn about him. Yeah. And then my mom, she talked to me one day, and I remember it was we were having a conversation, and she just kind of leveled with me, and she was like, Kechi, listen, a lot of times in this life, bad things happen. Bad things happen to good and bad people. Like, I had this idea that when you become a believer, you truly believe in him, then you're protected, you're shielded, you're like, you're going to be okay, whatever the world throws at you. Right. But, like, I forgot that the world will keep throwing things at you. It doesn't care whether you're a Christian or not, or whatever your belief system is. As long as you live in this world, good and bad things are going to happen to good. Jesus said, in this world, you will have trouble, but take joy. I've overcome the world. Exactly. It is what it is. You will have to experience those things. So being a Christian doesn't exempt you from experiencing negative, difficult things. But what the faith does, what having God on your side does for you, is that it gives you a place to run to when those things happen. He doesn't cause bad things to happen, but he is where you can go to for refuge, for peace, for comfort like no other when those bad things happen. And I couldn't deny the fact that so far, that is exactly what that had been for me. After all, that was the whole reason I started asking questions about him, because I knew something about this faith or this being brought about a peace that I couldn't get from morphine or any other
Right,
medication.
right, right. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, how do I like kind of merge that together? I couldn't deny that I really loved that piece and I craved that piece from him. But at
Right.
the same time, I had to understand that, you know, despite that piece, being accessible, he's also a place of comfort for when you don't have that piece. So I felt
Yeah.
like I had to understand that was what that I had to decide that was the role that God was going to play. That was who he was going to be for me, because that's who he wants to be for all of us, like he made. And so it was really kind of understanding that I like he's not the one that's causing the pain. That was very important for me to understand.
Right, right.
Other place to go to when the pain happens, because it will happen as long as you're alive. So I went to him with that kind of mindset. And then I also kind of thought about everything that had happened and all the lives that were lost. And I decided that maybe he can also be a source of strength for me, because after this thing happened, I just felt like it just was so unfair that, that only two people survived when everyone else could. That was always my thinking, like, you could save everyone, why couldn't you save everyone? And I wanted now to, since this was a situation, the bad thing had happened, we were here, we're alive, just two of us were alive. I now had this responsibility to see if I could live my life in a way that would make those that passed away proud. I wanted instead to make my life mean something for their sake. And most importantly, I wanted their parents, a lot of who I knew, to see that I was not going to waste this second chance.
Yeah.
Because I knew that they were praying for me too. They were praying, they were
Wow.
calling my mom. They could have easily resented me and my family for what happened. But that was never the case. They were always I feel they saw my life clearly as this hopeful, this one good thing, that came out of this horrible thing. And they rooted for me. They were like, of all, you must survive, I couldn't let that down. So I decided that I would draw strength from the memories of those that passed, and I would find a way to live my life in a way that would make their loved ones that they left behind proud. I felt like that was a great way to kind of turn
it's like a tribute.
Exactly. Live my life as a tribute. That's a really great way to put it. I wanted to draw strength from the tragedy instead. So I feel like that's what faith became for me. And so what I want to say from that is just, I understand how difficult it can be to kind of see any kind of light at the end of the tunnel when bad things are, when you're in the dark place, you can't.
When you're in the middle. Yeah. When you're in that messy, messy middle, right?
And it's important to grieve when bad things happen. I believe that you have to acknowledge it. You can't ignore it. You have to let the feeling go through you, because you're allowed to have those feelings and react to bad things. But you also have the power to choose how to come out of that place. Because there is a choice. There's always a choice.
Right.
You have the power also. You may not be able to control how you got there, but you do have the power to decide not to stay in that dark place, because that is what the devil wants. When grief happens, when tragedy happens to you, the ideal would be that you stay stuck in that dark place, and when you're alone, you feel misunderstood, and you never grow or move on from that place. That is what the world wants from you. That is not what God wants from you.
Right. Well, John 10:10 says that the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus said, I've come that they may have life, have it in abundance to the full till it overflows. So you're right. There's always a choice.
I think
there's a choice.
Yeah. So,
and maybe that person who is listening or watching right now, maybe this is why they're listening or watching is the day to make their choice, that they're going to turn their pain into something with purpose.
I promise you it's worth it. And it's obviously not easy, and a lot of times it takes years, but like, it's when it starts from that choice to make that change. And then from the moment you make that choice inside you, the process has started, but it's not going to be like immediately, or it's not going to be like the light and like immediately the next day. But once you've made that choice that this is what you want to, this is how you want to come out of this, you've already started that process of healing, of growing. And I promise, like, you're going to delve into parts of you that you didn't even know existed, resilience that human beings, I think we naturally have. It's just going to start coming out of you. And then within that tragedy or that trauma that you've experienced, you just have no idea what God can use that to do for other people in your lives.
Kechi, so beautiful. Thank you so much for seeing that purpose, even in the middle of that pain, of seeing that purpose of my life is going to be a tribute. I'm going to make this count for something. And truly, you have, and you are affecting the lives of so many people. Thank you so much for
Gosh,
being
thank
here
you
and being
for
my
having
special
me.
guest.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, it's been wonderful. Remember, guys, if you are stuck in that messy middle, and if the road in front of you looks pretty rocky, you don't have to travel this alone. God's got you, and you can make it through, and you're going to be blessed like crazy.